Afterglow is a game that can be described in a couple of words, and neither of those begin with "fuh" or end enjoyable. The true descriptors I'd use would be boring and tedious. I honestly debated if I even wanted to cover this game at all, as I wasn't sure there would really be enough to talk about, but after spending 5 hours of my life on this game, I needed to get something out of it. A game hasn't made me feel this miserable or exhausted in a long time, and part of me feels bad about it because I don't want to shit all over anyone's work. Regardless of quality, you can tell that the person who made this game at least tried and put in a year or more of their life. So while this review is going to be mostly negative, I'll try to keep things on the constructive side when I can and offer some advice. That being said, I'll keep it a buck. I hated this game, and to even slightly insinuate that anyone should spend their money on it in its current state would be disingenuous. In a lot of ways, I think this game can almost be used as a lesson on what not to do, and that comes down to the fact that the game was made with the intention of being unique first. The problem is that this game focuses so much on being unique that it throws away common FPS mechanics just to accomplish that goal, and in doing so makes the game worse to play. I can almost guarantee that if you play FPS games regularly, that you can already tell what's missing. How can anyone make an FPS game without a crosshair or any sort of way to indicate where your shots will go, and think that's a good idea is wild to me. Eventually I got tired of not being able to aim properly, and resorted to using my monitor's built-in crosshair. Some may call it cheating, but I call it making the game playable. At the very least, the premise is a bit interesting, even if a lot of details are left out on the actual game and only present on the Steam store page. However, unless you're a big lore fan, what the game tells you at the beginning is good enough to get an idea of what you're doing. Basically, the world's been dramatically affected by global warming, and as such, food could no longer be grown on the surface. With food shortages came wars, which started small but eventually grew to global nuclear war, causing a nuclear winter. During this time, various countries built these super fortresses, which went deep underground, where a select population would live waiting to restore civilization once the surface was sustainable. Due to harsh conditions, humans couldn't remain on the surface, meaning most of the population not selected to be in these super fortresses died. In order to protect important locations and these fortresses, automated security was built and are still active. Now, 13 years later, you've been randomly selected to go out into the world and clear the area of enemy facilities. You've been equipped with an AI-powered suit that will walk you through your mission as you progress. From this point, the story doesn't evolve much. There's some small revelations, but the goal never really changes. You're still tasked with taking out all the enemy security at their facilities. As you complete objectives, the AI will communicate to you through text, but it's usually as simple as telling you where to go next. Unfortunately, the story revolving around clearing out enemy bases covered in automated security causes a major issue for gameplay. Those automated security, aka turrets, are the only enemies in the game, and while there may be different kinds of turrets, they can all be killed using the same strategy of getting within range to drop their shield and then circle strafing while you fire your gun. You literally do not fight a single enemy in the entire game that is capable of movement. This makes combat excruciatingly boring, especially early on as the enemies are such bullet sponges. Combat in the early sections of this game is genuinely painful, with low damage weapons and incredibly slow energy recharge. In fact, it's so bad that the developer felt the need to actually make a guide for the beginning of the game to show how to upgrade your energy recharge as soon as possible. It seems that many people are disliking the game right away and requesting refunds. At least that's what it sounds like from him making a post asking people to at least give it a shot for a little while, and then request a refund if you still don't like it. It seems as if he's a little desperate for people to give his game a chance, which I can understand. No one wants to spend over a year working on a game just for it to fail. I suppose at the very least, he can take solace in knowing that it took me 5 hours to beat the game, so he gets to keep my money. Unfortunately for myself, I spent 5 hours playing the game. Also, I didn't look at his guide because as a reviewer, I felt compelled to play the game mostly blind, as to not influence my opinion in any way. This means that I didn't upgrade my energy recharge first, and holy shit, that was a mistake. It took insanely long to kill each individual enemy. This is also where I learned that every weapon shares the same energy pool, which I think is a huge mistake, and I think changing this would actually greatly benefit the game. As is, having every weapon in the game share the same pool incentivizes sticking with the same gun throughout most of your playthrough, especially once you've upgraded a weapon once or twice. If you were to change this so that each weapon had its own energy pool, that would encourage experimenting with different weapons, since you'd be inclined to change weapons when you ran out of energy with one, instead of just sitting around a corner waiting for it to recharge. This would also encourage players to spread out their weapon upgrades so that more weapons are equally powerful and useful in any scenario, rather than only upgrading 1 or 2 guns and using those exclusively. While I'm talking about weapon upgrades, that's one of the few aspects of this game I do actually like. In order to upgrade weapons as well as your health and energy pool recharge rates, you need to find collectibles hidden in objective areas. If you find enough of these, you can go to a 3D printer and craft upgrades using these materials. I also appreciate that on top of increasing your weapon's effectiveness, it also changes the weapon's models in a way that's still noticeably the same weapon, but better. I do wish there were more collectibles available. It doesn't seem like it's possible to fully upgrade everything in a playthrough. However, this isn't a big complaint and was likely intentional to push the player to think about their choices, though again, I think it just pushes the player to stick to one, maybe two guns depending on how thorough they are. The other major problem with the gameplay is the mission structure, which remains the same throughout the entirety of the game. You will never get an objective more complicated than move to an area and clear the enemies, and then move to the next area. Sometimes they may make the path between the areas a little more challenging, or just obnoxiously tedious. For example, this game features some of the worst platforming I've ever experienced from a first-person perspective. Sometimes an area will be destroyed, and the only way to get to the other side will involve jumping from platform to platform. The biggest issue with this is simply the momentum you carry when you jump, and the lack of any in-air control. There is no stopping or slowing down once you're in midair. Like old Castlevania, once you've jumped, you've committed. This takes a lot of trial and error getting used to, and you often need to jump earlier than you think in order to not completely overshoot. Luckily, platforming sections aren't too common, and a couple of them only require you to go down using small platforms, which can be done much easier by falling long distances and then tanking the fall damage instead of trying to actually move one platform down at a time. However, I'd happily take these platforming sections over the insanely long walks, which highlights my biggest issue with this whole game. It's so fucking slow. Your character walks like they're in a constant state of nearly shitting their pants, so you need to carefully walk to the bathroom clenching. There needs to be an increase in default movement speed, or a sprint function needs added, as these long walks have no respect for the player's time at all. Seriously, I felt disrespected. It's like the game is toying with you, just seeing if you're willing to walk for over 8 minutes down an unchanging path with no enemies present at all. I could just about do this entire review only using footage from one single walk, and there's numerous boring walks that take 4 to 8 minutes. I suppose on the bright side, many of the environments are nice looking, but with so many barren areas lacking anything other than open fields, it doesn't take away from the boredom. However, nothing wasted my time quite like the worst mission in the entire game, clearing out the old capital. This mission tasks you with clearing out 56 turrets from a massive abandoned city buried in snow. The biggest issue here is just how obnoxiously long this takes due to the city's massive size and the mind-numbingly slow movement speed. It takes about half an hour of walking back and forth clearing out each street. But what makes this mission even better is when you get to do it all over again, because there was a random mine under the ground that your suit failed to alert you about within a time period you could actually avoid it. It's just great when you're really close to finishing a mission, having already spent 20 minutes on it, just to get the pleasure of restarting from the beginning as there's no checkpoints, nor any way of manually saving progress. Honestly though, when this happened, I was devastated. I just sat there for a minute before deciding I had had enough and quit. I felt deflated. I felt like a broken man. I was desperately trying to reason with myself like, I could still make a video on it, no one will know I didn't beat the game. I grabbed myself a nice hot chocolate and went to my happy place. Ah, that's better.
No, 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 no! Wait! Wait!
I wish I could say it ended there, but it didn't. I'm too stubborn. There's no way I'm making a video on a game without beating it, unless there's a game-breaking glitch that literally prevents me from actually being able to. I gave myself the night off, but the very next morning I came back to persevere, before the exact same thing happened again. It was at this point that I started wishing for death's sweet embrace, as I knew even that would be more enjoyable than doing this for the third time. Unfortunately, the Grim Reaper was busy that day, which meant I was going back through the streets one final time, where I finally didn't blow up from a bullshit mine. Although I did almost die because I got stuck on the pushed up snow along the side of the road. Thankfully that didn't happen, and after over an hour of playtime in this one section, I was done. Please, for the love of God, add checkpoints in this mission, or at the very least a function for manual saving. Also, remove those damn mines from the road. I may have seemed a little jokey during this part, but the actual feeling of devastation both times this happened was real. I so badly wanted to quit in the moment, and the only reason I pushed through is because I have standards when it comes to making a video. I can't imagine any sane player would stick through that moment like myself, if they'd even make it that far in the first place. Ultimately, Afterglow is a conceptually flawed game. I don't think that it could be patched enough to make it genuinely fun, because its core gameplay is centered around fighting enemies that just aren't fun to fight. No one looks at a section from a regular shooter and thinks, oh boy, shooting those turrets sure was fun. Those sections are usually only added for the sake of variety or padding, but when your whole game is focused on that kind of combat, it gets repetitive fast. In the developer's post about the Steam Awards, he said that he tried to make the game as non-standard as possible, and therein lies the problem. He was so focused on trying to make his game unique that he forgot to make it fun. From what I've heard, this is the developer's first game, and I think that emphasizes the issues at hand. Instead of making a more basic shooter to learn, he went all in on trying to make something different, and it just doesn't work. I think this game is a lesson to all indie developers trying to make FPS titles. Don't worry about making your game unique until the core gameplay is solid. It doesn't matter how unique your game is if it's awful to play. I was going to end it there, but I decided I wanted to say something on a more serious note, and this is directly to the developer of this game, if you're even watching this. Regardless of how I felt about the game, I want to let you know that I still respect you for putting your game out there. You actually tried to make a real game and not just some Unity or Unreal asset flip, and that's commendable. I can't imagine how stressful developing your own game as a solo developer can be, so I respect you for doing it. Just because you've made one game that I perceive to be bad doesn't mean you don't have the potential to make a good game in the future. I hope you don't find this review to be discouraging, but rather motivation to continue furthering your game development talent. I sincerely hope that you find success in the future, whether it's through future game development or other endeavors. Good luck.